Ladies and gentlemen, today is the release date for the next version of Minecraft, Java Edition 1.16.2. This is a minor version of Minecraft, but still brings you a brand new mob in the Nether, as well as plenty of tweaks and fixes. My name is Slime. I'm here to guide you on a comprehensive tour of all the news in this version. However, in order to keep it somewhat short, we'll split this into several videos. This one is going to be the main video about all the gameplay changes. Then we're also going to have another video about all the loot changes in this version, because there are changes to both Bartering and to Bastion Remnant loot. Then, as usual, we'll have a separate video with all the technical updates, and there's quite a few of those because this version expands heavily on the new system for custom world generation. For this video, the timeline is split into sections so you can easily get what you're looking for. Let's go! Starting with the hostile mobs and the Piglin Brutes. Piglin Brutes are a brand new type of Piglin. They spawn only when bastions generate and will never respawn. They have 50 points of health, that is 25 hearts, and do 7 base damage on attack. For reference, a normal Piglin has 16 hit points, that is 8 hearts of health, and do 5 base damage. They cannot be distracted by gold or anything else, and they're not afraid of any types of blocks or entities. Piglin Brutes will attack players on sight no matter how you are dressed. If you're wearing gold or not does not matter. The Brutes spawn without any armor and wield unenchanted gold axes. Killing one yields no loot drops, but as with other mobs, they can of course drop their equipment. If you bring a brute to the overworld, it will convert to a zombified piglin, just like other piglins. There are changes to the other piglins as well. They will now become angry when you open or destroy a chest minecart. Piglin bartering loot has also been updated. As I mentioned in the intro, there will be a separate video for this that you will find in an iCard on this video if it's out now. It should be out very soon otherwise. Notable changes are that glowstone dust and magma cream have been removed, and instead blackstone, spectral arrows and water bottles have been added. A fix for the piglins and their friends. All types of piglins, hoglins and zoglins now know how to deal with invisible entities. And another change to Zoglins, they can now be put on a leash. Let's move on to other mobs, starting with Vindicators and Pillagers and Vexes. They will no longer raise their arm in an offensive gesture when they are attacking if they don't have a weapon. Endermen have been changed as well. They will no longer place down held blocks onto bedrock blocks, and they will also no longer place down held blocks when the space that they intended to place the block is occupied by any entity. For instance, this means that they will never place a block on a mob or on top of an item frame. Endermen can also pick up and place blocks in invalid block states. That is fixed in this version. A spawn fix in this version. Mobs will no longer spawn on top of iron, crimson and warped trapdoors. And in certain situations, mobs could spawn with items that had duplicate enchantments on them. That has been fixed in this version. The final fix for drops. A charged creeper going off when there were multiple different types of zombie variants nearby would not always cause a zombie head to drop. That is fixed in this version. Let's move on to passive and neutral mobs, starting with Striders, who will now try to stay in lava pools. If they are in lava, they will not pick new positions outside of the lava, and if they are outside of lava, they will try to get back to a lava pool. Baby Striders didn't die when it was raining and they were in lava, even though adult Striders did. That is fixed in this version, and you can no longer walk on top of Striders. Certain small mobs and boats would take drowning damage while the boat was moving. That is fixed in this version. And wandering traders have had a fix so that they're no longer always invisible when in the Nether or the End. Let's talk about villages. Farmer villages now compost one item at a time properly. Before, they could compost an entire stack at once. Villagers will now emit green particles when they join a village, when they select a home bed, or when they get a job site. And there are more changes to job sites. Villagers will now lose their job sites immediately when they change dimension. If they don't have any trading XP, then they will also lose their profession. When trying to find a new workstation, they will now also try to find the closest workstation first. When several villagers tried to get through a door at once, they would sometimes get stuck, and they would also sometimes spam doors like a machine gun. That is fixed in this version. When a villager converted to a zombified villager or the other way around, and they were originally sitting in a minecart or other vehicle, then they would pop out and sink slightly into the ground. That is fixed in this version. A related fix for iron golems: they could spawn out of control in some situations and cause iron golem overpopulation in certain villages. That is fixed in this version. And a few fixes for raids. Raids would sometimes not end in a defeat when all the villagers are dead. Specifically, this happened if a villager turned into a witch by being struck by lightning. World generation changes and fixes in this version. The chests in Bastion Remnants are now more likely to be located on top of gilded blackstone blocks. And the loot inside those chests has been tweaked. In general, now it is easier to get better loot from these chests, but if you want all the details, see the separate loot video. There should be a link in an iCard and in the video description. A fix has been done for the placement of the nether forest vegetation. Large fungi and small plants will now generate on any layer of the nether, not just the topmost one. A fix for ruined portals: they sometimes spawned without a chest attached even though they were in a safe location. That has been fixed in this version. And a fix for strongholds: they didn't generate properly if you were playing a floating islands or caves preset world. Let's talk about blocks and items. Lanterns and soul lanterns can now be waterlogged. And chains can now be placed in all orientation. That means that they can be placed horizontally as well as vertically. But you can't get a corner, so keep that in mind. Crimson and warped fungi can now also be placed on mycelium. And red and brown mushrooms can now be grown into huge mushrooms on top of nylium. And the huge fungi would grow through fire. That is fixed in this version. You can now place sea pickles in more locations. You can now place them on any block where the top surface would normally support placing a button. Item frames could not be emptied if you had the do entity drops game rule set to false. That is fixed in this version. Paintings in the same block space would pop off when the chunk loaded. That is also fixed. And lava could set the nether vegetation on fire despite it being fire resistant. Some fixes for redstone. Slime blocks could only push entities up 5 blocks instead of the 6 blocks as they could before. That is fixed in this version. And pistons facing down at height 1 or facing up at height 254 will now be able to push. If you push or pull a powered rail, activator rail or detector rail onto a block where it cannot be supported, it will now pop off instead of simply vanishing. Gameplay changes in this version. Brewing stands can now be crafted with blackstone instead of stone. Lava would cause damage both from lava and the fire in 1.16, causing you to take more damage from sitting in lava than in previous versions. That is fixed in this one. And speaking of fire damage, totems of undying now give fire resistance status effect for 40 seconds when activated. And speaking of fire and lava, if you logged out while riding a strider on lava and then logged back in, you would get set on fire. That is fixed in this version. A very old bug has been fixed. If you were stepping down while holding shift while sneaking, then you could step off of blocks into midair and fall off. That has been fixed in this version. Respawn position have changed for beds and respawn anchors. Respawn anchors will now try to prioritize cardinal directions over corner. That means that you are more likely to spawn straight out from the center of the block than in the diagonals. Beds will prioritize the side of the bed that you entered from, and then try to find a free space that you can spawn in, circling around the foot of the bed up onto the top of the bed. Common for both of these is that when you respawn, you will now be facing the block that you respawned at, and that they both will try to find a safe block that is not dangerous to spawn on, and spawn you there if possible. Some projectile changes. Throwable projectiles would impact with non-solid blocks like tall flowers. That is fixed in this version. And another change to projectiles, they now properly get affected by bubble columns. This goes for eggs, snowballs, ender pearls, splash potions, lingering potions, fireballs and shulker bullets. Some enchantment fixes. The Thorns enchantment would cause too much armor decay. Thorns taking effect still causes double damage, but they used to cause triple damage and would cause extra damage even when the enchantment did not take effect. That is fixed in this version. Soul speed didn't work when you had slabs or other blocks of similar height placed above the soul sand block. That is also fixed in this version. Another problem with soul sand. Some items could get stuck in soul sand when there was liquid above. This was a problem for some item elevators, and that is fixed in this version. And a minecart related fix. Players in spectator mode could interact with and even stop minecarts and boats. Minecarts could survive in lava. They will now pop up to item form when they encounter lava. A change to an advancement. Piglin Brutes are now required for monsters hunted and can trigger the Monster Hunter advancement. Let's talk about creative mode. When collecting liquids in bottles on creative mode, that will now act the same way as buckets will. That is, you will get one of the filled items, but not more than one. And you will now always get a stew item from using a bowl on a mushroom. Visual changes in this version. There are new accessibility settings that have been added to help with visual comfort. They are controls over distortion effects such as nausea and the Nether portal overlay that you can reduce. If you put this to low values, then the nausea effect is completely replaced and instead you get a green overlay as an alternate visualization. There's also a new slider that controls how much impact speed effects and similar effects have on your field of view. Some other visual fixes in this version. A dragon head would pop away if the entity wearing it was not in view, that is fixed. And while in a boat, elytra that were enchanted didn't render as fully enchanted. Soul particles had an invalid first frame, potted cactus was missing its bottom face, and wet wolves became nearly black in dark areas. Let's go through sounds in this version, of course. The new Piglin Brute has sounds. It has sounds for idling and walking. It is a sound for being angry. And for taking damage. And dying. Parrots can now also imitate Piglin Brutes, and if you look at the subtitle for this, it says, "Parrot snorts mightily." There's also a fix for a sound bug in this version. The Ender Dragon battle music will now stop after the Ender Dragon has been defeated. Some user interface fixes to note. You can now bind your open close inventory button to tab and it will work for both opening and closing. Speaking of inventories, tools are now sorted according to the material they have, and the materials are sorted by ascending power. Dice in the creative inventory are now sorted in the same order as wool. The resource pack and the data pack selection screens have had some small improvements made to them, and while the screen is open, it will now automatically update when the contents of the pack directory change. Some fixes for chat too. The chat delay settings are now also available in the chat settings screen, not only in the accessibility screen, and if you press F3 and D, that will now also create any pending messages from chat. A new option for servers. Dedicated servers can now kick clients that consistently send too many packets within a second. This is controlled by a new option called rate limit. By default this is 0, but if you set it to something higher than that in your server.properties file, then the rate limit will take effect. For our final section on stability and performance, a large number of crashes have been fixed in this version. In addition to this, some multiplayer lag and performance issues have been fixed, especially one causing the camera to snap back when there was high server latency, as well as performance fixes for several types of redstone circuits and moving blocks with pistons, as well as a fix for a performance issue caused by having trader llamas on leads. In addition to this, the Mesa driver is now properly supported for the fabulous graphics mode. And those were the major changes, additions, fixes and tweaks in Minecraft Java Edition 1.16.2. If you're interested in all the technical changes, then that video will be out shortly as well, detailing all of the changes in this version. And if you're interested in all the details of the loot changes in this version, then check out that video. It should be available right now or very shortly if it's not. But that was all for this video. I hope you found this comprehensive guide useful, and if you did, please help me out in return, leave a like and share it with your friends. If you want to stay up to date with all the latest Minecraft news, then please subscribe to this channel. I make update videos for every new snapshot, pre-release and release of Minecraft. And don't forget to hit that notification bell icon to have some form of chance of getting YouTube to tell you when my videos are done. But that's all for this time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Slime, and I will see you next time.